Imagine waking up in a world where falling asleep could mean death, and dying in your dream could unleash a monster into the real world. For Sunny, this nightmare is about to become reality. And somewhere inside that nightmare, something is already waiting for him. Something powerful enough to turn an entire battlefield into a graveyard. Sunny has no weapon, no allies, and barely enough strength to move. And with the creature closing in, every second could be his last. But this nightmare didn't begin here. It started in the real world, when Sunny's body finally reached its limit. Despite being completely exhausted, Sunny forced himself to stay awake until he reached a police station. The moment he revealed that he had been infected by the nightmare spell, everything changed. The officer immediately treated the situation as an emergency. Sunny was infected with something that had terrified humanity for decades. The spell was not simply an illness, it was a gateway into a deadly dream world. Years ago, strange cases began appearing across the world. People became unbelievably tired. They slept for longer and longer periods, unable to wake. And when some of them died in their sleep, they didn't simply remain dead. They returned as terrifying nightmare creatures. Humanity nearly collapsed. But there was another side to the spell. Some people survived their nightmares, and those survivors awakened with supernatural powers. They became humanity's strongest defenders. Unfortunately for Sunny, survival was far from guaranteed. He had no powerful family behind him, no legendary bloodline, no resources or connections, just a boy from the slums trying to survive. The officer explained what would happen next. Sunny would enter a nightmare, face whatever trial awaited him, and receive an aspect if he survived. But there was one horrifying condition. If Sunny died inside the nightmare, a gate would appear in the real world, and something would come through it. Before the officer could say anything else, Sunny finally lost his battle against exhaustion. His eyes closed, and the nightmare began. When Sunny opened his eyes again, everything felt wrong. He was standing beneath an enormous moon, but something about it immediately caught his attention. The moon was moving, not slowly. It was racing across the sky. Then, the sun appeared. Sunny stared in confusion as he realized the impossible. Time was moving backward. He turned around and froze. The entire landscape was covered with bones. Thousands upon thousands of skeletons lay scattered across the frozen ground, surrounded by broken weapons. Sunny couldn't tell whether he was looking at the remains of a war or a massacre. Before he could investigate, the nightmare changed again. Suddenly, Sunny found himself wearing heavy iron shackles. He wasn't alone. Dozens of prisoners were being dragged through a freezing mountain pass by armed warriors. Sunny couldn't understand what was happening. Most people entering their first nightmare were given some kind of opportunity, but apparently, the spell had decided to give Sunny the worst possible role. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a noble. He was a slave. Then strange symbols appeared in front of his eyes. Sunny couldn't read them, yet somehow he understood every word. The system identified him as an aspirant. His core was still dormant. Several strange attributes were also listed. Sunny immediately assumed that the difficulty of his nightmare must be connected to the reward. If the nightmare was this terrible, surely his aspect would be powerful. Unfortunately, Sunny was about to receive a very unpleasant surprise. His aspect was called Temple Slave, and according to its description, it was practically useless. Sunny stared at the system in disbelief. After everything he had been thrown into, this was his reward? He couldn't help thinking that the claim that there were no useless aspects was complete nonsense. But then another attribute appeared. Fated. It suggested that the strings of fate were tightly wrapped around Sunny. Wherever he went, strange events would follow. Good luck, bad luck, blessings, curses. Somehow, Sunny seemed destined to attract all of them. As the prisoners continued climbing the mountain, Sonny accidentally stumbled. One of the other slaves immediately warned him not to cause trouble. Another prisoner laughed and predicted that the mountain itself would kill the boy before sunrise. But then they noticed something unusual. Strange markings covered Sonny's skin. He wasn't an ordinary slave. He had been born into slavery. More specifically, he had once belonged to a temple dedicated to a forgotten god. And that revelation triggered another mysterious attribute, the mark of divinity. Somehow, Sonny carried a faint trace of something divine.
The prisoners began discussing what had happened to Sonny's temple. Apparently, the Imperials had destroyed it not long ago. Before Sonny could learn more, a young warrior approached. Unlike the others, he didn't treat Sonny like an animal. He even offered him some water. Sonny was suspicious but accepted the gesture. Unfortunately, their commander immediately noticed. A whip cracked through the air. The commander made his position very clear. The slaves weren't friends. They weren't even considered people. And the young warrior was warned never to become attached to them. Sonny said nothing. But inside his mind, he made a promise. Somehow, before this nightmare ended, he wanted to see that commander's corpse. The group continued through the freezing mountains until evening finally arrived. The commander ordered everyone to stop and establish a camp. For the moment, Sonny was still alive. But he had no idea how quickly that was going to change. The slaves gathered around the fire and received their miserable meals. One blonde-haired prisoner complained that even prison food had been better. Sonny ignored him. He had learned a long time ago that complaining didn't keep you alive, so he stayed away from the others and quietly observed his surroundings. For once, the air was clean and peaceful, almost too peaceful. Sonny decided to examine his attributes again. That's when he discovered something far more interesting. Child of Shadows. The description was simple. The shadows recognized him as one of their own. Sonny didn't know what that meant. But then he looked toward the darkness beyond the campfire and realized something incredible. He could see perfectly, even without the fire, even in complete darkness. For the first time since entering the nightmare, Sonny felt that the spell had actually given him something useful. Then one of the prisoners noticed another slave reaching for a strange red berry. He immediately knocked it away. The plant was called Bloodbane. It grew where human blood had soaked into the ground, battlefields, massacres, places where countless people had died. And Bloodbane was poisonous. Just a few bites could kill a grown man. Sonny stared at the plant. Something about this place suddenly felt familiar. Then he remembered. The bones, the shackles, the strange landscape he had seen when time was moving backward. Sonny suddenly understood. He wasn't seeing some random battlefield. He was seeing the future. Everyone around him was going to die. And almost immediately, the nightmare proved him right. A massive creature erupted from the darkness. Its enormous hands tore through the camp as warriors and slaves scrambled to escape. Nobody understood where it had come from. Then the warriors looked toward the mountain. More soldiers were running down the slope. They weren't attacking. They were fleeing. And behind them, something was coming. 5 glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. Then they disappeared. The warriors desperately